Hello everyone, I got a question for you. Can you tell me how a broken country like Japan just became the second largest economy in just 40 years? If you know the answer, that's really good. If you don't, this video is for you. August 1945. Two cities gone, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, wipe off the map in seconds. American firebombing has reduced Tokyo, Osaka and Nagoya, entire cities, to rebels. Industrial output has collapsed 28% of what it was before the war. People were starving in the streets, hyperinflation made money worthless, and millions had died. By any measure, Japan was finished. And then something happened that no historian expected, no economist predicted. Something that has never been repeated at the same scale in the entire human history. In less than 40 years, Japan became the second largest economy on the earth. Not by discovering oil, not by colonizing other country, and not by luck. By making a choice. A national choice, a civilizational choice. Today we are going to understand exactly how they did it. Because the lessons inside this story is not just about Japan. They are actually about what human beings are capable of when they decide to be. Let us start at the beginning, the real beginning, 1945. Japan had surrendered. American General Douglas MacArthur arrives and takes the control. And so the Allied occupation begins. And here is where the story gets immediately interesting. America, the country that just dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, decide to rebuild it. Not by guilt, not by kindness, but out of strategy. The Cold War is beginning. The Soviet Union is expanding. China is going communist, so America needs a strong capitalist ally in Asia. And Japan, broken, defeated, completely depend on American support, is the perfect candidate. So America does something extraordinary. It essentially redesigns Japan from scratch. Land reforms. Land is taken from wealthy landlords and given to farmers who actually worked it. 3 million peasants suddenly own the land they farm. Rural inequality collapsed overnight. Agricultural productivity jumps. For the first time, ordinary Japanese people have something to lose, and which also mean that they now have something to fight for. Labor unions are encouraged. A new constitution is written. Women get the right to vote. The emperor became the figurehead. Parliamentary democracy replaces the military dictatorship. And most importantly, Article 9. Japan renounces war. Permanently, constitutionally. This sounds like a restriction, but it turns out to be a superpower for Japan. Because Japan no longer needs to spend money on an army. America provides the security umbrella. Japan roughly spends 1% of its GDP on defense for next 4 decades. That is the money that goes into factories, in school, in research, in the future. While other countries are spending on weapons, Japan is spending on becoming better at everything else. But reforms alone do not explain the miracle. Something else happened, something completely accidental. In 1950, the Korean War begins, and Japan, sitting right next to Korea, became the supply hub for the entire American war effort. Trucks need repairing, weapon needs manufacturing, food needs supplying, uniforms need production, and all of it flows through Japan. $800 million pour into the Japanese economy every year. Heavy industries, which had been sitting idle and destroyed, roses back to life. Steel mills, shipyards, vehicle factories, all suddenly running at full capacity to supply a war happening in the country next door. This is the moment Japan's economy actually launches. Not from Japanese policy, not from Japanese discipline, from the war that had nothing to do with. But here is what separates Japan from every other country that gets lucky. Japan does not waste the luck. This is where MITI comes in, the Ministry of International Trade and Industries. And if you want to understand Japanese economic miracle, you need to understand MITI. MITI is essentially Japan's economic brain. A government ministry staffed by the best graduates from the best universities. And their job is to decide which industry Japan should build and then direct money, resources and policies to those industries. Protect them until they are strong to compete globally and then push them into the world. In 1950s, MITI looks at Japan's situation: no resources, no oil, no iron ore. Almost everything had to be imported. So the only way to survive is to import raw material, turn it into something brilliant, and then export that something in the world. Steels, shipbuilding, chemicals, petrochemicals, then automobile, then electronic. Each decade, Japan moves up the value chain, from cheap labor to quality manufacturing to technological leadership. And the income doubling plan announced by Prime Minister Ikeda in 1960s. It captures the ambition perfectly. The target was 7.2% annual growth, double the economy in a decade, which is ambitious by any standard. And Japan achieved over 10%. The economy doubled in less than 7 years. And this is not luck, this is execution. But government policies alone does not explain it. Something deeper was happening inside Japanese society, which brings us to the saving rate. While Americans were borrowing money to buy things that they could not afford, Japanese households were saving 18 to 30% of their income. Not because they were forced to, because the culture valued it. Because sacrifice now meant prosperity later. That saving went into banks lent it to companies invested it in factories, research and technology. So the capital flowed into production, not consumption. And the workforce that filled those factories was unlike anything the world had seen. They follow the concept of Kaizen, the Japanese concept of continuous improvement, not some dramatic revolutionary change, small improvement every day, every worker, every process slightly better than yesterday. Toyota's production system, which the entire world copies, come from this philosophy. No waste, no excuse, no comfort. Just efficiency, discipline and improvement. Lifetime employment in large companies meant workers were loyal. Companies invested in their workers because they were not going anywhere. Both sides were committed, both sides were benefited. And the education system was producing people who were ready for this. Highly literate, strong in maths, technically skilled, a population that could read manuals, understand engineering, and adapt to new processes. Human capital, that was Japan's only real resource, and they maxed every single unit of it. And then comes the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. 19 years after the country, reduced to ashes, hosts the world. And on the day the Olympics open, the Shinkansen launches the world's first bullet train, running at 200 kilometers per hour between Tokyo and Osaka. The message to the world was certain. Japan is back. Not just back, but ahead. By 1968, Japan's GDP is second only to the United States. The country that in 1946 could barely feed its population is now the second richest nation on earth. And then in 1973, suddenly the oil crisis hits. Japan imports almost 100% of its oil. When the OPEC cuts the supply and quadruple the prices, Japan gets hit harder than almost anyone. The economy goes negative for the first time since the war. Inflation spikes and crisis everywhere. And here it what Japan does. It adapts. Instead of collapsing, Japan became the most energy efficient manufacturing nation on the earth. Companies redesigned their entire production process to use less energy. Nuclear power expands. Industries shifted from energy-heavy steels and chemicals to electronics and precision manufacturing. And then comes the masterstroke. The oil crisis destroys American cars. They were massive, fuel-gushing, and expensive to run. And at the exact moment, Japan was selling fuel-efficient, reliable cars to American market. Toyota, Honda, Nissan. The Japanese automobile invasion to America happens because Japan turned its oil crisis vulnerability into competitive advantage. By the 1980s, Japan was not just surviving, it is dominating. Automobile, consumer electronics, camera, semiconductor, Japan is everywhere. Sony, Panasonic, Canon, Toyota, these are not just brands. They are the definition of quality for an entire generation of global consumers. So what is the lesson that we can take? Japan had nothing. No oil, no iron, no agriculture land, no colonial empire to exploit. A population that had just lost millions of people in a catastrophic war, and cities that were rebels. And from that, they built a machine that changed the entire world. The question is how? And the answer is just three things. First, they made a national decision to be disciplined. Not for 1 year, not for one generation, but for 4 decades. Saving over spending, investment over consumption, the future over today. Second, they were strategic. Government and private sectors worked together. Not government controlling everything, not purely free market. Coordinated partnership aimed at one goal. And the goal is make Japan world class in manufacturing things that the world wants. And third, they adapt. Every time the world changed, the oil crisis, currency changes, global competition, Japan shifted. The same discipline that built the factories was applied to reinventing them. Now, one honest thing, the miracle had costs. Environmental destruction was severe in 1950s and 60s. Rivers were poisoned, air was barely breathable. Workers worked so hard that Japan invented a word for them, karoshi. It means death from overwork. And when the bubble burst in 1990s, the same rigidity that made Japan great became a trap. Banks could not restructure, companies would not let workers go. The lifetime employment system was beautiful in growth, but now it became a weight in stagnation. Japan spent 30 years nearly zero growth after the bubble. The miracle was real, the cost was real. Both are true. Japan today is still the 4th largest economy on earth despite the aging population. Despite decades of stagnation, despite being replaced by China as Asia's dominant economic force, Japan still punches extraordinarily above its weight in technology, living standards, robotics, and quality manufacturing. Because the foundation that was built between 1945 and 85 was that strong. The question that I am keep coming back and I want you to think about is what Japan did possible anywhere else? And my honest answer is partially. The specific combination of American patronage, Cold War timing, homogeneous society, and a great work culture cannot be perfectly replicated. But the core principle can be. That is, a nation or a person with no natural advantage can still outcompete everyone else by being more disciplined, more strategic, and more willing to adapt than anyone around them. Japan proved it at the scale of a country. The question is whether you can prove it at the scale of your own life. If this video made you think differently what is possible and what is not, then I want you to please share it with someone who need to hear all of this, and do subscribe my channel and drop a like on the video and comment your thoughts on it. I will see you very soon. Until this side, Sahil signing off, and Jai Hind.